Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this super cute and easy water bottle bag inspired by all things cottagecore with a little rose charm and an AirPods case. So let's just get into the tutorial. Okay, so for this project you're going to need a couple of different colours of yarn and they are all double knit. I'm going to be using this Drops Lima Unicolor double knit yarn and it is in this pale pink colour. I'm going to be using about 100 grams of this for the main part of the water bottle. And then for the AirPods case and the roses, I'm going to be using the same brand, but this one is the Drops Nord Unicolor, and this is just like a sage green. And I've got 50 grams of this, but you'll probably only need a very small amount, so I would say around 20-25 grams is perfectly enough. Then for the roses, I've got this kind of dusky, darker pink, again a double knit acrylic yarn, and then I've just got some cream double knit acrylic yarn. And I'm going to be using a 3mm hook today. Like I say in most of my tutorials, my tension is very loose, so you might need to use a different hook to kind of get your tension correctly. So normally they recommend for a double knit yarn a 4 or a 5mm hook, but I like to size down and just keep my stitches nice and densely compact because, like I said, my tension is very loose. If you have a normal tension or a tighter tension, then you might want to go up to like a 5mm hook. I'm also going to be using a stitch marker. And then I've got one of these looped metal keyring top holder things. You can just get these on Amazon. I got like a big multi-pack because obviously for my tutorials, but yeah, you can get these pretty much anywhere. Or if you don't want to use a metal ring for your keyring, then you can just do like a chain on top of your work, or you can, you know, just use some yarn and like tie it on top. And most importantly, you're going to need your water bottle. So my water bottle just looks like this. And for reference, it measures, I would say, about 2.5 inches across. So if your water bottle is bigger than 2.5 inches across the bottom, then I suggest you either use a chunkier yarn or a larger hook to make your work come out bigger, or you can double up the size of your yarn so you can use 2 strands at once. That also will help create a bigger project. The main thing is that your work doesn't come out too small. If it's a little bit too big, that's completely fine. You'll know that your bottle is going to fit in there at least. However, if it's obviously too small, it's not going to get in there at all. So you need to make sure that when you do your final round of the circle section that we're going to do, that it is definitely fitting around the bottom of the water bottle. So we're firstly going to start off by making our main part of the bottle, so the kind of water bottle bag section. We're going to start off by making a circle, and then we're going to build up the circle. We're going to build the height to finish the kind of height of the water bottle. So just take your main colour and make a slip knot. And with your hook, you're going to start off with a chain of 3, like that, and then into that third chain from the hook, you're going to make a slip stitch, like that. So this is going to create like a little circle, and you want to spread out that chain 3, and you should find that small hole in the centre. So it's this very tiny one right here. I don't know if you can really see that. That very small one right in the middle is where we're going to be crocheting into. So you can see right there, that small one in the middle. So I'm going to basically be creating 10 double crochets into the ring, and I'm going to start off by just chaining 1. This doesn't count as a double crochet, and I'm just going to do 10 double crochets into that small circle in the centre, like that. So I'm going to yarn over, spread that ring apart so that you can find that centre circle, so it's that one right there in the middle, and make your double crochet into that. Once you do a couple, it's so much easier to see the ring. So insert your hook, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through 2 again. And that's your double crochet. So you're going to be doing that in total 10 times. That was my first one. I'm going to do my second one now. So yarn over, insert your hook into the ring, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2, and yarn over and pull through the last 2. Once again, yarn over, insert the hook into the ring, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the second 2. Okay, so now I've got 3, so I'm just going to keep doing that until I have 10 in total. Okay, so I've now finished my 10th double crochet, and I'm going to place my stitch marker in that 10th double crochet. So we're going to make a slip stitch back into that chain 1 that we made, so just insert your hook, then yarn over and make your slip stitch, like that. And now we've completed our first round. So for round 2 I'm going to be doubling the stitches, so I'm just going to be doing 2 double crochets into each stitch. So this is going to bring your stitch count up to 20. So we've just done our slip stitch into the chain 1, and now we're going to start the round again. So chain 1, and then into the next stitch we're going to make 2 double crochets. So just do 2 in that first stitch, like that. So you should have 2 in one stitch. Into the next stitch, repeat the same thing, 2 double crochets in that stitch. Same into the third stitch and into each stitch all the way around until you reach the stitch marker. So just 2 double crochets into each stitch. Okay, so I'm just about to do my last one, so I'm just going to take the stitch marker out and do my last 2 double crochets into that stitch. And then I'm going to replace the stitch marker back in, so that very last double crochet I've done, put the stitch marker in there, and then I'm going to slip stitch into that chain 1. So you're going to ignore the slip stitch down here and slip stitch right where we just did that chain 1 at the beginning. So it's always going to be a slip stitch into the chain 1 for the time being, like that. Okay, now our next round we're going to be chaining 1 again, and this time we're going to be doing a increase every other stitch. So rather than doing 2 double crochets into each stitch, we're going to do 2 double crochets into every other stitch. So I'm just going to start off by doing 2 double crochets into our first stitch, and then into the next stitch I'm just going to do 1 double crochet. So you'll see that you've got 2 in here and 1 in the next one, and that's going to be the sequence all the way around. And by the end of the round your stitch count should be 30, so this time we've increased our stitches by 10. We've gone from 20 to 30. So just continue doing 2 double crochets into your first stitch and 1 double crochet into your second stitch. Repeat that all the way around. Okay, so I'm just about to do my last stitch, which is just going to be 1 double crochet in that last stitch. Then I'll place my stitch marker in that spot. And to finish the round I'm just going to slip stitch into that chain 1. Okay, so for the next round I'm going to chain 1 again to start, and then this time I'm going to do an increase into the first stitch, so 2 double crochets, and then into the next 2 spaces I'm going to do just 1 double crochet. So into the first stitch, 2 double crochets, into the next stitch 1 double crochet, and then into the next stitch 1 double crochet. And I'm going to repeat that sequence all the way around, so 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, into the next stitch I'll do 2 double crochets, and then into the next 2 stitches 1 double crochet. So just repeat that all the way around, and then at the end of the round you should then have 40 stitches. Okay, so I've just done my last increase, and now I'm going to finish my last 2 stitches with just 1 double crochet. Like that, then place the stitch marker back in. At this stage you just want to check where the circle reaches on your bottle, so I'm just going to slip stitch into that first chain 1 to complete the round. Like that. And then I'm just going to grab my bottle and check. So this fits nicely around my bottle and it just goes slightly over. So technically it's slightly too big, but it's pretty much the correct fit, so I'm happy with that. I do also have another bottle with me that is the exact measurement, so this just goes to show that even if the bottle is slightly smaller, it still fits comfortably and neatly over the bottom. It doesn't look too big at all, so I'm just going to carry on as is. So at this point the base is all complete, and now I'm just going to do one round of normal double crochet, so that is no increases. So I'm basically just going to chain one as normal, and I'm just going to do one double crochet into each stitch all the way around. So nice and simple, there's no increases, we're just doing one in each stitch. So once you've completed your final double crochet, instead of slip stitching into the chain one, we're going to slip stitch into the double crochet to complete the round, like this. Slip stitch. And then we are going to be starting our mesh stitch, and then I'm going to go into the next stitch with a half double crochet, and I'm just going to place my stitch marker there in that half double crochet, and now I'm going to start my sequence. So the sequence starts with a half double crochet and then a chain 3 and then skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then this is where the sequence technically starts again. So then we would do our one half double crochet into the 4th stitch away, like that. Back at the beginning, a half double crochet, we'll chain 3, and then skip 3, 1, 2, 3. Start again, half double crochet into that 4th stitch, and chain 3, and then skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, into that 4th stitch, half double crochet. You want to just continue that sequence all the way around, and then I will show you what to do once you get to the end of the round. Okay, so I've just done my last half double crochet, and now I'm going to chain 3 and do my last chain 3, skip 3. So I'm going to skip 1, 2, 3. So now you just want to slip stitch into that half double crochet to close the round. Okay, so after that slip stitch, we're now going to start our next round right in the center of that chain 3. So you just want to basically find the second chain of the chain 3. So this one was our half double crochet, this is the first chain, so this is the second chain. So you basically just want to count 2 stitches away, and we're going to start our half double crochet there, and this is going to be the start of our next round. Place the stitch marker there. And then I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then to the 4th stitch, which actually happens to be the second chain of the next 3 chains, I'm going to do my half double crochet. So now we are going to be doing our half double crochets into the center of each of the chain 3s. So chain 3 again, and skip the next 3, so 1, 2, 3, into that 4th stitch, or second chain of the 3, do your half double crochet. Chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and make your half double crochet into that next chain. I'm just continuing this all the way around. Okay, so once you have reached the end of the round and you've done your half double crochet, we're going to do the last chain 3, and we're basically going to be continuing on from where we are. So rather than going into the stitch marker stitch, we're going to simply count 3 stitches from here, so 1, 2, 3, and then into the next space here, this is where I'm going to do my next half double crochet. And that's where I'm going to replace the stitch marker, because that is going to be basically like the end of each round. So you will find that as you keep doing this, it's going to kind of move around, but that's what's going to keep this cool, like, kind of netting open work stitch. So from this point forward, I'm just going to simply do the pattern as normal, so chaining 3, skipping 3, 1, 2, 3, and then going into the middle stitch and doing my half double crochet. Same again, chain 3, skipping 3, 1, 2, 3, and then going into that middle stitch. And I'm going all the way around, and I'm going to basically just continue until the work reaches just before the top of the bottle. So if I just show you now, it's about a quarter of the way, so I'm just going to continue up until I reach about 3/4 of the way, and then I'm going to do like my last 2 double crochet rows to match kind of up here. If you've got somehow more double crochet rows visible at the bottom, you can just match how many are visible up here. So it's pretty customizable, and again, it doesn't have to be super exact because at the end of the day you want it to look good on the water bottle. So basically I'm just going to carry on going round and round and round doing this mesh stitch, and the stitch marker is purely just to kind of keep track of when you've reached the end of a round, and then you can kind of count how many you've got. So far I have just done 2, and I'm just starting my 3rd one over here. So I'm just going to continue up until I've got about 1/3 of my bottle left, and then I'm going to come back and show you the last few rows. Okay, so I have done now all of my mesh rows, so I ended up doing 9 rows in total. You can just kind of count them by these squares going diagonally. So now I'm just going to now be doing the last few rows of double crochet. So from this point forward, I'm just going to take the stitch marker out, and I'm going to start my next stitch. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the next stitch, which happens to just be a chain. So I'm just going to slip stitch, and this is just going to kind of close the row together. So now I'm going to just chain 1, and I'm going to do a double crochet into the same stitch, and then I'll place my stitch marker into the chain 1. So not the double crochet stitch, the chain 1 stitch, and that's where we're going to be slip stitching. And now I'm just simply going to do a double crochet into each chain and each stitch. So where you see a chain, you just want to push your hook through those 2 loops and do your double crochet as normal. And then when you see a half double crochet stitch, you just want to do your double crochet as normal into that stitch. So like here's a double crochet, and then here we've got the chain, so I'm just doing a double crochet all the way round, and this is basically just going to bring us back to what we were doing before. Okay, so now I have reached the end of the round. I'm going to skip that slip stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch into the chain 1 where I marked it, like that, and then I'm just going to replace the stitch marker in that slip stitch so we can start our next row. So now to start the final row, I'm just going to chain 1, and then into the next stitch, double crochet, and into each stitch all the way around, double crochet. And then once I get to the end and I do my final double crochet right here, I'm going to slip stitch. I placed the stitch marker in the wrong area, sorry about that. Once I get to the end of the round, I'm going to place my slip stitch into the double crochet, and that is going to be for the final round. So if you're not doing your final round yet, then you can continue doing your normal rounds, and then when you do get to your final round, you want to slip stitch into the double crochet stitch. Okay, so I've just done my last slip stitch into the double crochet, and now I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off, because now that is the end of the main part of the bottle bag. And then just pull that through, and then we can tuck that in later. And now I'm going to show you how we do the strap. So you can do the strap with any stitch you want, but I recommend doing kind of like a dent stitch and one that is quite strong. So I'm going to be doing slip stitches, and again you can use whatever stitch you want. So if you want to carry on with double crochets, or you can do your own, you know, whatever one you want. So I'm going to just take my exact same colour and make a slip knot. You can start the strap anywhere you want, so just place your hook through any stitch along the top, and then take your slip knot and then pull it through, and then just so that it doesn't pop out, just chain 1 to attach it. Now at this point you just want to basically chain however long you want the strap to be. So if you want it to sit kind of lower around your hip, then you need to do quite a few chains. So I'm basically just going to make a chain until I'm happy with the length of it. Remember that it's going to go up and then it's going to go over to the other side, so you basically need to kind of try it on, make a chain and then slip stitch it to the other side, or just hold it there with your hand and see if you're happy with how long it is. Okay, so I've done about 165 chains, and you want to make sure that from where you started your first chain that it is not twisted. Okay, so now that I've checked it's not twisted, I'm going to now place my hook onto the opposite side, so just kind of hold your work like this and then just kind of find the stitch that matches up on the opposite side, and again it does not need to be exact, so don't worry too much, and you just want to make a slip stitch through both of those loops. So find the kind of corresponding stitch on the opposite side, then insert your hook and make a slip stitch, and then once you've done that it's kind of nice and attached, so don't kind of worry too much about it falling off or anything. So we slip stitch it down, and then you want to slip stitch one more time into the next stitch across. So if you're right-handed you'll be going in that direction, and then we're just going to turn the work. So turn the work so that we're now working on the kind of back part of the chain. So we've just done our slip stitch, and now I'm going to basically slip stitch into the slip stitch that we originally done on the work. So we had that second slip stitch and this was the first. So I'm just going to pick up the tail of the work, insert my hook into that second slip stitch from the hook and make a slip stitch. It's a lot of slip stitches, but you'll get the hang of it. Okay, this is just going to keep it nice and tight, and then we're going to do something nice and easy. We're just going across the back of the chain into these back bumps, so these horizontal bumps right behind each chain, and we're just making a slip stitch into each one. Okay, so just find that next back bump, that horizontal one, and then make a slip stitch into it. And I'm just going across the chain now, all the way, doing a slip stitch into each back bump. Okay, so once you have completed your last slip stitch in the row, you're then just going to slip stitch back into the same spot, like that. And then to do the next row I'm going to just slip stitch into the next spot, and that is basically going to kind of be like a chain one. So I've slip stitched into the next space across, and then I'm going to turn the work and I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next space or the next stitch of the row, and then I'm just going to continue up the row making one slip stitch into each stitch. And just be careful not to make these stitches too tight, because on the following row they're going to be really hard to insert your hook into. So like I said, I'm just going into each stitch all the way across the row, and then essentially once I get to the end of this row I'll be back over here, and I'm going to basically do the exact same thing. I'm going to slip stitch into that last stitch of the row, and then to start the next row I'm going to slip stitch into the following stitch, and that's going to act as if it's a chain one. And essentially I'm just going to keep going back and forth across the row until I'm happy with the thickness of the strap. So if you want to finish it here then you can, it's going to be a very thin strap, or you can continue across until you're happy with the thickness. But I'm basically just going to carry on until I'm happy, and then I'm going to come back and fasten off and then show you the next step. Okay, so I've just finished my last row. I ended up doing about 3 rows in total, and then I just finished by doing a slip stitch back into the same space. So I didn't do the slip stitch into the next space for that final part where it would technically be a chain one. I just did my slip stitch and then I just chained one and fastened off. Now I'm just going to weave in any ends and then I'm going to show you how to make the roses. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make the roses. So starting off with the actual petal section, you just want to take your darker pink colour, or whatever colour you're using for the rose, and you just want to make a slip knot. And then with your 3mm hook, you want to make a chain of a multiple of 3. So I am going to do a chain of 15. However, if you want to do a bigger rows, then you can obviously just do more chains. But yeah, I'm going to do a chain of 15, and this is going to be the perfect amount for the size that I want. So I'm just going to chain 15, and then I'm going to add an extra chain at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then I'm going to add an extra chain for that turning chain, like that. Okay, so I'm now going to go into the second chain from the hook, and I'm going to just do a single crochet, and then into the next chain I'm going to do a double crochet, and then into the following chain I'm going to do a slip stitch. And that is going to be the sequence that I repeat all the way across. So into the next stitch I'm going to do a single crochet, or in the next chain, sorry. In the next chain I'm going to do a double crochet, and then into the next chain I'm going to do a slip stitch. I'm just going to repeat that again, so single crochet, then double crochet, and slip stitch. Okay, do that 2 more times. Single crochet, double crochet, and slip stitch. Last one. Single crochet, double crochet, and slip stitch. Okay. Then you just want to chain 1 and fasten off, and I'm going to leave a long tail to sew. I'm just going to tuck this small end into the back of the work. Okay, and then for the stem I'm just going to basically make a slip knot, and you can make a chain of whatever length you want, however long you want the rose stems to be. I'm going to make a chain of about 12, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12, and then I'm going to go into the second chain from the hook, and I'm just going to make a slip stitch into that second chain. And then nice and simple, I'm just going to do 1 slip stitch into each chain all the way across, so that is going to be 11 slip stitches in total. Okay, so there's your stem, and then after you've done your last slip stitch you just want to chain 1 and leave a longish tail for sewing, like that. And then just to make things a little bit easier, I'm just going to tie the 2 ends together a few times just to really make it secure, and then don't worry too much about the end because it's going to be covered in the rose. We're going to roll the rose up, and then the stem is going to kind of get rolled inside of it, so just tie it a few times and then you can just cut that short end, and then you want to take your long end of the green stem and place it on a sewing needle. So you've got your stem here, and then you just want to take your rose kind of long strip that we've made for the rose, and you're just going to simply want to sew the top of the stem to the kind of center of the rose, and you want to make sure that you are not picking up the loops on the opposite side. You just want to kind of grab loops from one side so that it's not showing on the back. So this is my neat side, so I'm just going to turn it to the wrong side, or the kind of messier side, and I'm just going to basically insert my needle into a couple of loops on the center of the rose, so right here, and I'm just picking up loops on this side so it won't show on this side at all. So just picking up some loops, make sure that the ends aren't tangled, and then just pull through, and then you can kind of just like wrap the tail back through the stem from the back to the front like this, through again, and then go back into those loops. And I'm just going to kind of repeat that a few times until it's nice and secure. It doesn't need to be like really neat and precise. You just want to make sure that the stem is attached to the work, and it's not going to fall out. And sewing it like this just eliminates any possibility of it falling out. And then we're going to wrap the rows around it anyway, so it's going to be like double secure. So once I've kind of wrapped the yarn around the stem and the rows a few times, and then just going to secure it with a knot, so I'm just going to go through the stem and kind of grab one of the loops on the rows. Again, does not need to be super accurate or neat, I just need to make sure that it's secure. So just insert your needle like that and then pull it until you have kind of a short loop that you can then insert your needle back through, and then just pull to kind of create a knot. So you should have something like this, and just pull and you'll get a nice little knot like that. Then just tuck the end in, and then you can just cut the yarn. So that's nice and secure inside. And then what we can do is on the opposite end to where the tail is of the pink rose, I'm just going to snip this end off so it doesn't get in the way. So the opposite end of where the tail is, I'm just going to roll this up as if it's like a rose, and then once you get to the end, you can just kind of grab the tail and then just sew back and forth through the rows to secure it. So you've already got your stem here, you don't need to worry about it, it's nice and secure. And now we've got the ends, you can just go back and forth across until all of the layers of the rows are nice and secure. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, so we're now going to do the AirPods case. So just have your AirPods case kind of around so that you can continue measuring it. I've just got one of these shapes ones, but I've just got this shaped one, but if you have a different shaped AirPods case, then you might need to do more chains to accompany for like the wider like length across. So just start off with a slip knot, and for this size, I'm going to have up on screen what type these are. I'm going to do a chain of 8 plus 1 for the turning chain. So you want to make sure that you are chaining an even number plus 1 for the turning chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, and then 1 more for the turning chain. Okay, so once you have your chain, you're then just going to flip it over so that you are working along the back bumps, so these horizontal bumps. And you want to find that second back bump, so that's the back bump behind the second chain, insert your hook into that, and then make 2 single crochets into that back bump, like that. And then I'm going to make 1 single crochet into each back bump across, and then when I get to that final back bump, I'm going to make another 2 single crochets. So just going into each back bump with 1, and then at the end, I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that very last back bump. Okay, last one, so I'm going to do 2 single crochets into this one. Okay, so this is what it should look like so far. So we've just basically done a row, but what we're going to do is we're going to curve round to the bottom and work across the bottom so that we can actually create like a very, very long circle, kind of like a sausage shape. So where you've got the end of your row here, you just want to turn the work kind of upside down so that we can now work across the bottom. If you're right-handed, your loop here will be at the opposite end, so you're just going to want to tilt it like this way and you'll be working in this direction here from right to left. So we've just done our 2 single crochets in that very last back bump, and you'll see that when you turn the work upside down, that stitch at the very beginning of the row has already been crocheted into right here. So you just want to leave that one out because that one's not part of the bottom of this, and then you just want to make a single crochet into each stitch across. And you'll notice that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, and then I've got that turning chain right there in the next part. So the reason why you want to chain an even number +1 is so that when you get to the bottom section here, you've got an even number of stitches. And basically you want to leave 2 stitches in the center of those even number of stitches to do a hole for the charging section. So basically I've got 6 stitches and I need to leave 2 stitches out for the charging hole. So 6 minus 2 is 4, which means 4 are going to be crocheted into, and these are going to be either side of the charging hole. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets, leave these out for the charging hole, and then the final 2 single crochets. So for example, if you have 8 stitches in your row and you're doing a different size, then you are just going to want to work out how many stitches either side you need to crochet and leave in the center. So you want to leave 2 stitches in the center always. So if you've got 8 stitches on your row, you want to do 8 minus 2, which is 6, and then you want to divide 6 by 2 because you want to half it to make sure that you've got an even number on both sides. So you want 3 stitches either side of your 2 stitches in the center. So I hope that makes sense. I'm now going to go into my next 2 stitches with a single crochet. And then here is going to be my center hole for the charging section. So now I'm just going to chain 2 and I'm going to skip those 2. And then to finish this round I'm going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So 1 and last one, that's 2. So now you can see I have got my charging hole in the center and I've just finished the round. So to fully finish the round we're going to close it by simply doing a slip stitch into this chain 1 space. You'll see this kind of larger hole right here, and we've got this stitch right above it which was our first single crochet. So this kind of space right here and this very tiny little V was our chain 1 for the turning chain that we done at the beginning. So you just want to slip stitch into that space right there, and then that has completed the round. So in total you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stitches if you have completed the same pattern that I've just done. If you're doing a different number of chains because you've got a different size, then you might have a different number of stitches, but don't worry, the instructions are still the same. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my next round. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to place my stitch marker in this chain 1. This is where we're going to be slip stitching into later, and you just want to check that this width fits nicely across the bottom of your AirPods case. If it doesn't, you might want to just do one more increase row. So you might just want to do 2 single crochets at the beginning and then 2 single crochets on this side just to even it out. Doesn't matter really where you put them, but it's just to even it out. So as you can see here, this fits nicely across, so I'm just going to continue and I don't need to do any more increases. I'm just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around, and when I get to those chains I'm just going to do 1 single crochet into the chain. So I've just reached the chain, so I'm basically just going to push my hook through that V and just do my single crochet as normal. So now I have reached the end of the round. Here is my slip stitch and this is my chain 1. So you always want to skip the slip stitch and you're going to insert your hook into where that stitch marker was, which was the chain 1, and you want to slip stitch into that chain 1. So if there's a stitch right before your stitch marker, that is the slip stitch. You want to ignore that, that does not count as a stitch, and just continue as normal to slip stitch into the stitch marker stitch. So now I'm just going to chain 1 again. Place my stitch marker where that chain 1 is, and I'm going into the next stitch with a single crochet to start my next round. I'm literally just going to repeat this all the way until it gets to the section right here where this line is before the lid flips up. So I've completed all of my rows. I ended up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rows in total, and that reached just before the lid. So now I'm just basically going to cut the yarn and fasten off. And I'm basically just going to repeat what I did for the beginning but without the hole. So I'm going to chain the same amount again. I'm going to chain 8 plus 1 for the turning chain. Got 8 chains, and I'm going to chain an extra one for the turning chain, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing. I'm going to flip the chain upside down, and I'm going to do my 2 single crochets into the second back bump from the hook, and then 1 single crochet into each back bump across, and in that final back bump another 2 single crochets. Okay, so that is that section completed, and now I'm just going to turn the work upside down again. And this time I'm not doing a charger hole because this is going to be for the lid, so I'm just going to go straight into the next stitch and do a single crochet, and then all the way up to the end, so just right before that turning chain section up here. So now I have done all of my single crochets for my first round. To complete the round I'm going to do a slip stitch into that chain 1 space right there, and then to start my next round I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to grab my stitch marker and again place it in that chain 1, and then into the next stitch I'm going to do 1 single crochet, and then into the next stitch a single crochet, and I'm going to go all the way round and do 1 single crochet into each stitch. Remember that the stitch right before the stitch marker is the slip stitch, and you want to skip that, so just take your stitch marker out and place a slip stitch into that stitch marker space, which was the chain 1. Okay, and that is the second row complete. So now you just want to repeat round 2 until this fits over the lid. So I'm going to do a few more rounds of round 2 until it fits around the lid, and then I'm going to come back and show you how we attach it to the actual base. Okay, so I've just completed my final round and I did my slip stitch back into the chain 1, and now I'm just going to fasten off. So I'm simply just going to chain 1 and cut the yarn, and then I'm going to weave this end onto the inside of the work. Okay, and then you just want to take your yarn and cut a long tail. Just going to hold them together, and then I'm going to create a little knot. So I'm going into both of these stitches, just lining them up, and then I'm going to create a little knot. So I'm just going to pull through, and then I'm going to go back again through the exact same stitches, and I'm going to leave a short small loop, then go back through the loop and just create a knot, and then that's nice and secure and I can carry on sewing. So I'm just going to go into the exact same stitches again one more time to secure it, and then I'm going to go into the next stitches across. I'm just kind of wrapping the yarn around in a spiral into each stitch to secure everything. Okay, so I'm now going to add a little bit of extra detail to my AirPods case. So I'm going to flip the case upside down, so I'm just purely going to be working across the lid edge right here. And I'm just going to insert my hook into the side stitch right here. If you're right-handed, you'll be inserting it over on this side and working across, but it's literally the exact same thing. And then just take the colour that you want to use for a little bit of frill detail. I'm going to be using this green colour, and make a slip knot, and then you just want to pull your slip knot through that side stitch on the lid, and then just chain 1 to attach it so it doesn't come undone. And now I'm going to just do 3 single crochets into each stitch all the way across. You can do any stitch you want, but I just think that single crochet looks best for kind of like a small bit of detail. So I'm just going to go into this stitch and just do 3 single crochets, and then into the next stitch, same thing, 3 single crochets, and I'm just continuing that all the way around till I get to this edge around here. Okay, once you've done your last single crochet, you just want to slip stitch into that same stitch and then chain one and fasten off. And literally now all you need to do is just weave in the end into the back of the work, or the inside of the work, and then the AirPods case is all complete. So once I've weaved in that end, I'm actually going to now secure my metal ring to the keychain here, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to attach the AirPods case and the rose to the same ring here, and I'm just going to use embroidery thread for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to use the embroidery thread to kind of push the roses together so that they're not kind of flopping apart like this. So I'm simply just going to go in from one side to the other a few times until that's secure, and then I'm going to end on the middle one here so that I can use the embroidery thread to attach it to this metal ring. And then this one will be much easier. I'm just going to attach the embroidery thread around the top here and just sew a few times to the top here until that is nice and secure, and then that is literally everything all complete. And then you just want to attach your metal ring to your water bottle holder. And this is what the final result looks like. I hope you guys all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Let me know how your little water bottle bags came out, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys.